You want to see a city that actually worked. Not the ruins, not the romance, not the Hollywood version with clean togas and perfect teeth. You want to see the machine when it was running full speed. 1 million souls crammed into 7 hills, moving, sweating, scheming, trading, praying, killing, loving, and somehow not tearing itself apart. This is Rome on a summer day in 128 AD, Emperor Hadrian's 20th year. The empire stretched from Scotland to Sudan, from Spain to Syria. 50 million people under one government, and it all ran from here, from this. Right now, it's 4 a.m. The city is breathing in darkness. You can smell it before you see it. Wood smoke, human waste, baking bread, the Tiber's muddy breath. 1 million people sleeping in buildings stacked 6 stories high. But look closer. See those lights? The city never actually sleeps. Bakers are already firing their ovens because Rome eats 40,000 loaves by noon. Water carriers are hauling their first loads because upper floors have no plumbing. Night soil collectors are emptying chamber pots because sewage doesn't take holidays. Guards are walking their beats because crime loves darkness. But here's what you need to understand. In 2 hours, this sleeping beast will explode into controlled chaos. And somehow, it will work. The question is, how? How does a city of 1 million people, most of them poor, speaking a dozen languages, packed into fire traps, under summer heat, with no refrigeration, no electricity, no running water above ground level, no police force as we'd know it, how does it not just collapse? Let me show you. Dawn breaks, and Rome wakes up angry. By 6 a.m., the streets are already packed. Carts that were banned during daylight yesterday are now racing to deliver before the sun climbs higher. Iron wheels on stone streets sound like the city is screaming. Workers are flooding toward their jobs, construction sites, workshops, docks, warehouses. The bakers who started at 4 a.m. are now selling bread to lines of people who will eat nothing else all day. And you start to see the first answer. Rome works because Rome never stops working. Look at the port. The sun isn't even fully up, and already 3 grain ships from Egypt are being unloaded. Not by machines, by hundreds of men hauling 60-pound sacks on their backs. These ships, they're the only thing standing between Rome and starvation. The city produces almost no food. Everything comes from somewhere else. Egypt, North Africa, Sicily, Spain. 1 ship delayed. Riots. 1 bad harvest. Famine. 1 enemy fleet. Catastrophe. So the ships never stop. The grain never stops. The machine never stops. But how do you organize this? How do you make sure the bread gets baked, distributed, sold, and eaten by noon? How do you prevent hoarding, price gouging, theft? You're about to see the empire's beating heart. By 8 a.m., the forum is alive. Not the tourist ruins, you know. The actual forum. Marble so white it hurts to look at in the sun. Bronze statues gleaming. Temples with painted colors so bright they look fake. And packed. Absolutely packed with bodies. Lawyers arguing in basilicas. Bankers changing money. Merchants signing contracts. Officials registering citizens. Scribes copying documents. Philosophers debating. Politicians networking. Marriage contracts. Inheritance fights. Property disputes. Tax collection. Census records. This is where empire happens. Not on battlefields. Here. In paperwork. In signatures. In recorded transactions on wax tablets and papyrus scrolls. And everyone is here for a reason. See that senator walking with 6 slaves? He's not here to sightsee. He's maneuvering for a provincial governorship that could make him 10 million sesterces. See those merchants arguing? They're disputing a shipment of garum, fermented fish sauce, that costs more than most people earn in a year. See that woman in the fine stola. She's here to file legal papers because, unlike most ancient civilizations, Roman women can own property, run businesses, and sue in court. But here's the question that should be bothering you. How does this not turn into chaos? 1 million people, hundreds of languages, slaves from Germania, standing next to merchants from Syria, standing next to citizens from Gaul. Every ethnicity, every religion, every agenda, packed into one city, under one law. How? The answer is, Rome is organized violence. By 10 a.m. you can see it. City guards, vigiles, breaking up a fight in the Subura. A criminal being flogged in public for theft. A court sentencing someone to the mines for fraud. Tax collectors with armed escorts collecting rent from shop owners. Building inspectors checking construction. Because after the Great Fire 60 years ago, there are actual building codes now. Rome works because Rome is watched. Constantly. But it's not just force. It's something else. Something stranger. Watch this. A slave in the forum hands his master a wax tablet. The master signs it. The slave is now free. Just like that. Manumission. Freedom purchased or earned. And that former slave, he can become a citizen. His children, full citizens with all rights. Or this. In the courts, a freedman is suing a patrician over a business deal. And the freedman might win. Because Roman law doesn't care who your grandfather was. It cares what the contract says. Or this. At the bathhouse, a senator is naked in the same pool as a shopkeeper, a soldier, and a freed Greek slave. No clothes means no status markers. In the baths, everyone's just skin. This is the other reason Rome works. Social mobility. Not equality. Never equality. Rome is viciously hierarchical. But possibility? Yes. You can rise. You can fall. A slave can die a millionaire. A patrician can end up in debt prison. The machine is brutal, but it's not entirely closed. And that possibility, that tiny sliver of maybe, keeps the whole thing from exploding. But can it last? Noon. The heat is crushing. The city slows. Not stops. Never stops. But slows. The smart Romans head to the bathhouses. The poor find shade. The workers keep working because they have no choice. At the Colosseum, they're preparing for this afternoon's games. In the shops, they're closing for midday rest. At temples across the city, priests are performing noon rituals to gods most Romans don't really believe in anymore, but still dutifully worship because tradition is the skeleton that holds civilization together. And you start to notice something. Rome runs on routine. Every day, the same bread. Every week, the same market. Every month, the same rent. Every year, the same festivals. Variation is death. Predictability is survival. When you're cramming 1 million people into a space that should hold 100,000, routine is the only thing preventing murder. But here's what's bothering me. And it should bother you too. What happens when the routine breaks? Because it has to break eventually, right? One bad harvest, one plague, one military defeat, one emperor who goes insane, one fire that spreads too fast, one mob that gets too angry. What happens when 1 million people all panic at once? By 2 p.m., you can see the cracks. In the insula, those apartment blocks, you can see how people actually live. Not in marble mansions, in 5-story fire traps made of wood and brick and hope. Families of 6 in a single room. No running water. No kitchens. Too dangerous. Fire. Risk. They cook in the streets or buy food from taverns. Chamber pots emptied out windows, disease everywhere, infant mortality that would make you weep. The rich live in spacious homes, domus, with courtyards and fountains and private baths and painted walls and mosaic floors. The poor live in stacked boxes where you can hear your neighbors breathing through the walls. Same city, different worlds, separated by a single street. And yet, it holds together. Why? Because Rome gives the poor just enough. Free grain, public baths, gladiator games, chariot races, bread and circuses. The formula that keeps a powder keg from exploding. You feed them. You entertain them. You give them just enough hope that tomorrow might be different. And they don't riot. Usually. But what happens when the grain shipments stop? By 4 p.m., the Colosseum is packed. 50,000 Romans screaming for blood. Not metaphorically, literally. In the arena, gladiators are fighting to the death. Criminals are being executed by wild animals. Exotic beasts from Africa are being slaughtered for entertainment. Blood is soaking into the sand, and the crowd is ecstatic. Women, children, senators, slaves on their day off, all watching humans die and calling it sport. This is Rome's pressure valve. The violence that doesn't happen in the streets happens here. Controlled, ritualized, turned into spectacle. The anger that could burn down the city gets channeled into cheering as a Thracian fighter guts a meal. Is this civilization? Or just organized barbarism? Honestly, it's both. That's the thing about Rome. It's the most sophisticated civilization ever built, with aqueducts bringing clean water from 40 miles away, with concrete that will outlast empires, with laws that will shape the world for 2 millennia, with literature and philosophy and engineering that we still study. And it's also a place where watching people die is family entertainment. Rome is contradiction. Rome is everything at once. Rome is human civilization with all the beauty and horror that implies. By 6 p.m. the city shifts again. The heat breaks. The workers finish. The shops reopen. The forum empties. The streets fill with evening crowds. At the bathhouses, the second wave arrives. Everyone who couldn't come at noon. In the taverns and thermopolia, wine shops with hot food, workers are spending their day's wages on dinner and wine because there's no way to cook at home and no reason to save money when you'll probably die before 40 anyway. This is when you see the real social life of Rome, not in mansions, in wine shops, where strangers sit at communal tables drinking wine cut with water, eating stew and bread, arguing about chariot racing teams with the passion we reserve for football clubs, where deals are made, gossip is traded, prostitutes work, gambling happens, fights break out, and the city's real business gets done. No apps, no social media, just humans in a room talking. And somehow it works. Somehow people from across an empire find common ground over cheap wine and the blue faction's latest loss at the circus. But here's the question. What holds it all together? Not the emperor. Most Romans never see him. Not the gods. Most educated Romans are skeptical. Not patriotism. Half the city isn't even from Italy. So what? By 8 p.m., I think I have the answer. Watch this. At the neighborhood fountain, people are gathering for water. They're talking, complaining about rent, discussing tomorrow's plans. A mother is nursing a baby. An old man is telling a story. Kids are playing in the street. And for a moment, it looks almost normal. That's what holds Rome together. The tiny connections. The baker who knows your name. The landlord who gives you an extra week on rent. The neighbor who watches your kid. The shopkeeper who extends credit. The colleague who covers your shift. The friend who lends you money, the patron who helps your career, the client who spreads your reputation. Rome is a machine, yes, but it's a machine made of a million tiny human connections, each one fragile, each one necessary. Break enough of them, and the whole thing collapses. Maintain them, and you get this: a city of 1 million strangers who somehow function as a society. By 10 p.m., Rome is winding down, not stopping, never stopping, but slowing. The taverns are full of drunks. The streets are dangerous. Nighttime belongs to thieves, the vigils, and people with nowhere else to go. The wealthy are behind locked doors. The poor are crammed into their insula, trying to sleep through the heat and noise, and the baby crying next door, and the couple fighting upstairs, and the drunk pissing in the hallway. At the temples, priests are performing evening rituals. At the Vestal Temple, 6 virgins are tending the flame that must never go out, the flame that symbolizes Rome's eternal existence. At the palace on Palatine Hill, the emperor is doing whatever emperors do: plotting, planning, pretending to be a god. And at the docks, night shifts are unloading ships by torchlight because the grain never stops. The machine never stops. Rome never stops. By midnight, as the city finally finds something like quiet, you have to ask yourself, can this last? Should it last? Rome believes it's eternal. The propaganda says so. The architecture declares it. The very name, Roma Eterna, eternal Rome, assumes it. But you and I know the truth, don't we? We've seen the ruins. We know how the story ends. In 3 centuries, the Western Empire will fall. In 12 centuries, the Eastern half will follow. The city that seemed immortal will become a medieval village, squatting in the ruins of its own greatness. But here, tonight, in 128 AD, none of that has happened yet. Here, Rome works. Impossibly, brutally, magnificently, it works. 1 million people who should be at each other's throats are instead sleeping, working, trading, loving, and somehow building the longest-lasting empire in Western history. How did they do it? How did they make this impossible city function? The answer is, barely. Through organization and violence and tradition and social mobility and bread and circuses and 1 million tiny human connections and sheer stubborn refusal to admit that this shouldn't work. Rome works because Romans make it work. Every day, every hour, every minute. One transaction, one conversation, one loaf of bread, one contract, one law, one compromise at a time. Is it perfect? God, no. It's horrifically unjust, casually violent, deeply unequal, and built on slavery. But is it civilization? Yes. The most successful, longest-lasting, most influential civilization the Western world has ever seen. And tonight, at its peak, with the empire stretching to the edges of the known world, with prosperity flowing in from 3 continents, with art and literature and engineering and law reaching heights that won't be matched for 1,000 years. Tonight, Rome sleeps, and tomorrow it will wake up and do it all again, because that's what Rome does. It endures. We know all this because Rome left evidence everywhere. The apartment building's foundations still exist under modern Rome. The amphitheatres and bathhouses and aqueducts and roads. The graffiti scratched into walls. Election slogans, insults, love poems, crude jokes that make you realize Romans weren't that different from us. The account books, the tax records, the letters, the contracts, the tombstones that tell us who they were, what they did, how long they lived, who they loved. The literature, Juvenal's complaints about city life, Martial's poems about bathhouse gossip, Pliny's letters describing dinner parties and legal cases and daily routines, the archaeology, the lead pipes with inscribed names, the coins that tell us inflation rates, the pottery that maps trade routes, the bones that reveal diet and disease and average height. We know what time bakers started work, 4 a.m. We know what people ate, bread, olive oil, garum, wine, rarely meat. We know how much rent cost, crushing. We know life expectancy, late 20s for the poor, maybe 40s for the rich. We know building heights, up to 6 stories, often collapsing. We know water consumption, 300 plus gallons per person per day, more than modern Rome. We know Rome better than almost any ancient civilization because Rome was obsessed with records, with contracts, with writing everything down and carving it into stone and spreading it across an empire. They wanted to be remembered, and they were.